Hello and welcome to our next general session, Applying AI in Cybersecurity, the CISO Perspective. Joining me for this session are Ariel Weintraub, Chief Information Security Officer at Aon, and Mike Baker, Chief Information Security Officer at DXC Technologies. So to start, let's learn a little bit more about our experts for today. Ariel, can you please start and tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey in cybersecurity, and what you're up to these days?
Sure. Hello, everyone. As mentioned, I'm currently CISO at Aon. I've been here for about a year, actually coming up in a week or two. My background's all in cybersecurity, primarily in financial services and insurance, but background in identity and access management, security operations, and engineering. And I'm a two-time abnormal customer, so I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, we are glad to have you. And Mike, if you could also tell us a little bit about yourself, too.
Yeah, thank you. As you mentioned, I'm CISO at DXC Technology. So we're a large global technology firm that provides global infrastructure services, app development, et cetera. We have about 125,000 employees globally. So it's a big job. I actually started out as a auditor with EY. I was a consultant for 14 or 15 years before I got my first opportunity about 10 years ago to be a CISO here with a defense contractor in the Washington, D.C. area. And then about 3 years ago, I switched over to DXC, which provided a little bit of a different industry, but a lot more scale for me and my teams to grow. From an abnormal perspective, I've been a customer for a few months, been very pleased with it, and I'm just really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, Mike and Ariel, thank you very much for being here. For our attendees, wanted to kind of give an idea of what we're going to talk about here today. Also for Mike and Ariel, this is what we're going to be talking about. Current uses of AI in cybersecurity, the biggest opportunities, the largest challenges that we've faced with it. Vendor relationships, also a key point for us these days. Talk about your abnormal experience and also take a look at 2025 and what we think it will be coming. So that's kind of what we're going to unpack going forward. Now, let's dive right in. We have been hearing a lot about the future of AI here on the conference today. Ariel, can you share with us how you're currently using AI in your security stack? And how has it improved your efficacy or your productivity?
Sure. I'll first start out by saying that I don't think AI in our space is necessarily a new thing. I think it's certainly gotten a lot more attention as we've started to leverage particularly generative AI. And so it's a little bit more commonplace for not only us, but our colleagues in other areas. In terms of how we use it, I think there's certain things that as humans we're better at, and there's certain things that computers are better at. So the best example I like to use is, how many times do you proofread an email that you read and you just keep skipping over that one word that you forgot to put in, but your brain doesn't notice it, right? Because that's how human brains were designed. We kind of fill in those gaps ourselves, and we don't have necessarily that QA function like a computer might to be able to detect that, which is a good thing because we can process information in a certain way. But then sometimes that missing the or the missing and is actually really important. And when we think about that in alert detection, for example, missing something like that the human eye sort of glosses over is an important thing that we might need. So the best use cases that we found are where we have very specific, where the details are very important, and particularly in the security operations space, we ingest so much content and so many alerts. We have millions of signals that we have to process. Of course, it's too many for a human to look at individually, and the context of that is really important. And so the more signals that we put together to create more of a context-rich environment so that we can detect what's truly anomalous is where we've had really the most success of that. And whether that be through email context or through the endpoint telemetry, et cetera, the more of that we combine together, that's where we have the best success. So really the use case is anomaly detection, parsing through the large volumes of things to find that needle in a haystack.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think SOC, email, and endpoint has probably been the best one. I think, you had mentioned Ariel, I think it was so accurate. It was like we've kind of been dealing with this in different terms for a long time, right? Whether it's, AI, really, what does that mean right now? Does that mean generative AI, which is our ability to use the English language to do, much more natural searching and stuff like that? Is it moving towards agent-based AI, which I think is like really the promise of replacing human beings in the roles for what we're trying to do, really to replace human speed with machine speed. But we found a lot of success, I think, in these early days, as Ariel mentioned, in the SOC space. Definitely big. Naturally, the email space is where we're here. And then on the endpoint space, some of the large platforms coming out with their generative AI, modules that have gone in have had a lot of promise. I still think that there's a lot to go, though. I think we're really just on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think you're exactly right, Mike. So, staying with you, Mike, what do you see as the future of AI in security? In other words, where are the biggest opportunities going forward?
Well, I think I mentioned that. We started like I think this is going to be the year of agent-based AI, right? We've kind of started that. It's kind of been rolling out. I think we've had 2 years of Gen AI and everyone coming out with Gen AI modules. But when I think about agent-based AI, I really think about what is the promise of replacing, as I mentioned, that kind of human speed with machine speed. And then also when you're pairing different AI agents on the security side with AI agents on the IT operations side, we can get to like a really great perspective here in which we're dealing with identifying the issues, as Ariel mentioned, the anomalies out of large volumes of data, and then immediately transferring that over to the recovery, the operations, and the infrastructure space for remediation. And I think that's going to be the promise of this year. I'm really like looking forward to it. I think that's been something that we've been talking about for a long time, but we haven't quite gotten there. But I think 2025 is going to be the year that we realize that in some of these large platforms.
Agreed, agreed. Ariel, how about you?
Yeah, I think all the same things, but I think what sometimes will set a human apart from a model is context and history. And of course, a model only knows what you tell it. So where we've seen the most success in solutions is where we have the most context, right? So right now, I think a lot of our solutions are more siloed. So this model over here that's used for email may know the context around what it sees in the email space. This model over here may see the endpoint telemetry, etc. But what a human may know is those two things together because they've worked one of those incidents. They sort of remember, oh, I worked an incident last year in this channel that kind of reminds me of this, right? So the more of those that we tie together, then of course the model will have the same level of history and context that the human does. So I think the best case going forward in the future is where we have more open platforms and the platforms themselves can kind of connect together. Of course, some vendors are making a play for a full platform, and then their value add is that they can enrich all of the content from all of the different channels, but you may not want to go that way. So I think the more open platforms we have where we can connect the models to each other to give context from one to the other, the more successful they'll be going forward.
Yeah,
You
I think
mentioned
that's been my experience as well. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, you mentioned the context, and like that's absolutely correct. But I've been at two or three different scales of cyber shops. Doesn't matter how big you are, you never have enough people, and you have even less qualified people that you want at that time. I often think about, that context being applied to the high value tasks. Like, what's that eyeball time being spent doing? And I'm looking literally in 2025 as again the year that I can take a human being that may not have that like skill level that's up here that may be entry level, and how is AI going to augment them to allow them to apply that context like truly where it matters, not in the massive pile of data that you mentioned before, Ariel. I think that's going to be the true promise on the workforce side, is we're going to have a lot more flexibility to apply people more quickly to the problems as opposed to just throwing a bunch of people at it, trying to fill that workforce gap, trying to train up, and in pretty much always ending a little short in a lot of shops.
Yeah, agreed. And like Ariel said, I think the SIM was really supposed to be kind of the thing that united all these things together for us and identify and unite all of the anomalous log data that we had. and just never really came to fruition quite the way that we expected. And that's the reason I like your view going forward in terms of having AI be able to consume that much data and start to identify anomalous activity across a wider variety of log sources, but without
It
even
wasn't SIM, and then it wasn't SIM, and then it was SOAR, and then it
right.
was playbooks, and then it was this, and then it was that. So
Yep.
I'm hoping we can solve that problem now,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
every year it's been something new, and I think this is of high promise.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. So
And
no,
that's
good
awesome.
call out, Mike. So yeah, we're good there. So now, Ariel, jumping forward here a little bit, what have been your biggest challenges in AI, and is there anything that could change in the next 12 months or so that could solve this for you and your team?
One is probably fear. I think people fear AI because they don't understand it. So there's a lot of hesitation around for good reasons, but how do we use AI and what are the governance processes around how we think about leveraging it? And of course now many, if not all, providers have AI embedded in some way or another into their platforms, and it's really understanding the difference between use of a model that's a closed model versus one that's an open model where what you may share with the model is then shared more broadly. So I think maybe lack of real understanding by consumers of how the models are designed and how the model interacts within your own environment versus with the third party's environment is super critical to be able to then leverage these capabilities more broadly, because the reality is it can make all of our lives easier on a day-to-day basis if we truly understand. So I think the more that the general public sort of understands what some of these risks are and how to use these tools properly, the more successful I think we'll be in leveraging them. But I think there's always going to be limitations to, again, not having things that a human has the benefit of having access to. So you can plug all of the context enrichment in for one environment, but what you can't necessarily replace is a human that's worked at another company and has historical knowledge of something else somewhere else, right? That's important. They bring that to the next company. Now, of course, some people work in the same company for an extended period of time, but I think it's more common in our space that people move around. And so I would say this challenge of really replacing, particularly in the SOC, these analysts with all models is that we don't get the benefit of sort of understanding that context from previous roles and previous environments.
Yeah, good call out, Mike. How about you? How about the team over there at DXC?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, agree with everything Ariel said. I think there's three things that jump out at me. One is the pace of change is unlike something we've seen before. I mean, maybe there's some examples there, but I can't really think of them. And when I think of pace of change, I then think about how ready is your workforce to meet that pace of change, right? With like 10 years ago, it was the cloud, right? And it took a lot of time to train up the cloud ready, the cloud native workforce. Ariel talked about the fear. We had that fear factor for 5 years. But this pace of change is so quick and so rapid. My challenge is going to be how ready is my cyber team, but more importantly, my entire technology team, my entire company, how AI native are they? How ready are they to meet the challenge and take advantage of the opportunities, not just in protecting our company, but providing opportunities for our offerings to our customers. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we just had CES. I think the NVIDIA just came up with a whole new trove of like new things. And, we really have to set time aside to really hunker down on learning and staying up with the latest developments. I think that's absolutely crucial. And more importantly, as leaders, it's how are we allotting the required learning time for our teams? Everyone's going to say they're overworked and they're busy and we don't have enough people. But in the end, you got to spend 10%, 20% of your time learning and keeping up with this if you want to be the AI ready workforce of the future, right? So I think that's kind of my big concern. And then I think lastly, and Ariel probably would agree with this, and I offer your comments after this, it's what's real. Like as consumers of these platforms, and we are being inundated every day with an AI story. And this is the AI story. And it's almost becoming a point where it's noise. And understanding as a consumer what's real Like, what's going to provide real value to my company, real risk reduction in the offering that they're providing me, and being able to do that quickly without going through a ton of meetings and apply that quickly is going to be very important, but also very challenging. And I can't do that by sitting through 20 pitches every week on this new thing that ends up just being a new large language model that I've seen 6 other times at different companies. So that's really, the first thing that came to my mind is pace of change, AI ready workforce, and how we're really setting them up for the future, and then just what's real, right? What's real and what can provide value immediately.
Yeah, I think Mike, your third point is actually probably related to your second point. So the more that we're educated in this space, the more easily we can identify what's real and what's not real. And I love that you made the analogy to cloud, because I think we should take some lessons learned from cloud adoption over the last 10, 15 years and not do that again. So one of my pet peeves, for those that know me, is the fact that we have cloud security functions, and my own team can, kill me because we have our own cloud security function, but or team. But I think, why do we need a cloud security team, right? We should just have a cybersecurity team that is educated in cloud environments and cloud capabilities in the same way that we have over the last 20 years and on the on-prem space. So I think when you think about AI, what I definitely don't want to end up with is an AI security team. We just need team members that understand AI and use it in their day-to-day, just like we should be leveraging cloud as a platform that we host things in. And so I think taking a lesson from that, we can apply that to how do we create a more I forgot the term you used, but I liked it, AI ready team workforce. And that's beyond just our teams, right? That's beyond just the cyber teams. That's our entire workforce. And I think then that allows us to bring that forward to assess when our providers are talking about what their AI capabilities are, is to separate the real from just the terms at that point. So I think those two things can definitely come together as an opportunity.
Yeah, and Ariel, you actually brought up, right, separating pretenders from contenders and that sort of thing. When it comes to vendors, what are the things that you find to be really important for you in your department, and like how do you evaluate security vendors, especially when they're making these crazy claims about AI? In essence, how do you tell the real AI functionality apart from the marketing jargon?
Well, I think it's asking the how question. So in any set of slides, any company can share kind of a vision of how they might leverage AI, but asking questions when there's a bold statement made about things like, false positive rates, for example. I love when the company says, we've never had any false positives. Well, that's because you just don't know about them. But, I think really understanding the how, like how are you calculating that metric when they're sharing some sort of metric for success? How are these two things connected to create the architecture that you're describing? It's just really getting behind the details, and then of course asking the smart people on the team, which is not me, but asking the people on the team, like really to dig in and to challenge it. Like I love when the team gets their hands on a new capability and tries it out themselves and challenges the company and challenges the product, and ultimately it should just really make it better, but uncover any of those sort of vaporware comments that are created in some of that.
Yeah. Mike, how about you?
I have one simple rule, Mick. Don't waste my time. Come prepared, come correct. Know my business, right? Know the risks associated with my industry, right? We're a global technology company, right? We have a rather large enterprise of 125,000 employees. We have, 3,000 customers across different industries, right? You need to know the specific risks and challenges that come with running that shop and trying to secure that shop before you even get on the call. And just word of advice to all the salespeople out there: you have your PowerPoint decks, take the first 3 or 4 slides and just erase them. Get to the business, right? Get to what Ariel mentioned it, right? What is it? How is it going to work? How are you different from the other tech? And then show it. And then demonstrate the value it's going to mean to me in a very rapid, immediate fashion, right? I don't want to sit and wait and implement something for months and months and months. I want you to come in with a point of view. What does this mean for DXC? What does this mean for the industry? What does this mean for your shop. What could this mean in terms of business value or risk reduction? And just show me. And show me in 20 minutes, not an hour. I don't want to hear about all the awards you have. Show me what makes you special. And I think that's the tenacity that I expect out of partners these days, a tenacity, a swagger, a confidence behind, their solutions. And then that to me leads to what a true partnership is, which is right now, right? We're all together on one team now because we formed a partnership with Abnormal to protect our companies, right? And that's what it means, is be that partner, right? So not only is it that first engagement, it's every engagement after that. How responsive are you? Are you keeping up with my company, the changes in my company after the sale occurs, right? Are you checking in with me and my team and the challenges that we have on a periodic basis? Do you know what's going on? That intimacy, that tenacity, right? That swagger is what's going to separate you from the rest.
Yeah, good point. And I'll tell you, just to double click into something Ariel said as well, is that, she had mentioned kind of digging into the how, right? Really questioning the vendors on how exactly is this going to happen. I remember I was at an event in London not long ago, and I was talking with a vendor. This was an MDR vendor, and they said, "Oh yeah, we use AI." I said, "Oh great, tell me more about how you do that." And they said, well, we use the AI once the detection has occurred and the analyst has completed their investigation. Then we use AI to help write the report. I was like, wait, hang on. That's not exactly using AI as like a core functionality of your product. You're using, that's sort of window dressing at that point. And that's what we've got to be kind of cautious about, at least in my experience. I would love to tease that out from both of you. Are you hearing these kinds of things where everybody says it's my solution's powered by AI, but as you dig into it a little bit more, it's been bolted onto the side, and it isn't actually a core functionality of what they're doing? Ariel, have you seen this?
Yeah, I think that's probably really common because there's so many also just third-party capabilities that you can directly plug into a software that will allow you to do just what you just said. So I don't know that I've had such an extreme example of asking that question and then finding it in that way, but I'm absolutely confident that that's true for many.
Yeah. How about you, Mike?
But I do think we need to be a little easy on the ecosystem here, right? Like this kind of like, again, I'm heads down, protecting the company, protecting our customers' data. 2 years ago, the revolution kind of hit us. I wouldn't say out of the blue, but it definitely hit us and it hit the world, right? Everyone's trying to take advantage of this, and I like it, right? When you talk about report writing, Mick, I'm all for that. That saves time. I don't want my people writing reports. I want them generating reports. Like we here at DXC have AI, we generate at least the skeletons of proposals. That's like one of the big things that we do as it relates to, using large language models to, again, reduce man hours, right? Increase efficacy, right? All that good stuff. So yeah, I think there's claims everywhere. I'm willing to listen to the claims if they're compelling, if you come correct. But I do like to see, again, there's going to be hits or misses when innovations kind of running the ship here, and I do give a little bit of leeway to our technology ecosystem because there's a lot of players out there trying to maximize value here, and that's good for all of us.
Yeah, I think just one example of that, and I've probably used the same example in every place I've talked about AI, but is leveraging the best tools that we have in our toolkit, like a calculator, right? Like, we don't need to do math in our head or on paper anymore because we have a calculator. Like, let's use the calculator for that. Let's understand how the math works behind the calculator so that we can call, something out and say, well, I don't think that answer sounds right because, there should be a few more zeros in that than there actually is. So like understanding what you're expecting in the output, but not having to do the math in your head or on paper every time. Like that's the best way to sort of put an analogy to what you just said, Mike, which is, yeah, like I don't need to spend the time writing the actual report. I still need to proofread the report and I still need to make sure that it makes sense. And in order to do that, I have to understand what went into getting there, but I don't need to spend the time writing the report. So let's leverage the best tools that we have in our toolkit to maximize where we want to spend our time and where we want to spend our human capacity versus leverage those automated tools.
Absolutely. Now, listen, we've spent some great time talking about AI more generally, but the reality is you're both here, and Mike pointed this out, because you're both Abnormal customers. Would love to hear a little bit about that Abnormal experience. Ariel, what has that been like for you there at Aon?
So we're early in our implementation here, so I'll talk maybe more broadly about past experience as a customer, but I think the volume of email these days, and in terms of separating the spam from the good from the malicious, is getting more and more complicated. I think spam and malicious email look more like each other now, that the traditional ways of detecting the difference, or even a human detecting the difference, is getting more complicated, because as phishing attacks evolve, and honestly evolve through the use of AI, right? Because the attackers can leverage capabilities that they didn't have before to improve the English native narrative of it, for example. As all of that evolves, it makes it harder and harder for even a human to detect the differences in that. So for me, in my experience, this is where kind of using models against models has been the most successful, because we can more easily identify those malicious from the spam using the thousands of signals that we have access to that a human could never process in between. So I think very successful in the past in terms of, one, just reducing the volume of the potentially bad emails that get through, but then also in the event of something does get through, being able to more easily detect kind of just the spam from the something that's bad that's going to happen, or something that could be an indicator of something coming down the line as well. I mean, I know even just during proof of concept time, where you have it kind of turned on but not in blocking mode, you have the opportunity to see, well, we had this legitimate phishing campaign happen. Would the tool have caught it? Yes, it would have. That's kind of gives confidence in understanding how it goes, how it would work going forward. So just overall, I think the concept is necessary in order to just process the volume of data that we have coming at us these days.
Very good. Mike, how about you? I know you had joined a team meeting with us here at Abnormal not long ago and shared some things from your experience with Abnormal. What has it been like using and deploying Abnormal at DXC?
Yeah, no, I think the tech, it works, and it works well, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing Ariel was talking about, is how is the model training itself to be able to, more readily identify bad stuff, right? And when we think about bad stuff, it's not just the misspellings and things that AI can help with, right? It's business email compromise, right? It's legitimate emails coming through with like a weird different context that they haven't seen before, and the tech works, and we put it through its paces. We have a really large email environment. We have a ton of messages going through, and we were able to do an evaluation based on competitors, and really in the end, like, the things I'm going to say after this are kind of moot if the tech doesn't work, and I can rest easier at night on the email threat vector with Abnormal having my back, and I say that very honestly and transparently. Been very happy with it over the last couple of months. Outside of the tech just working, which is the most important part, we look at the ability to put it through its paces, its ability to plug and play. Right? I think we spent a couple hours implementing it. We mentioned before the portability, given the pace of change in AI. A couple hours, I think a week to train the model, something like that. Quote me on it, but right around there. Then we're off to the races. That is amazing. When you think about, what Ariel and I had to go through to implement different technologies even a couple of years ago, the months and months and months it took, the infrastructure we had to stand up, the people we had to train to get it rolling, to have this thing applying that good tech within a week or two was spectacular. And it was a good win, I think, not just for Abnormal, but for the DXC users, right? I think third of all, we had mentioned partnership before and what that means. And I had said a couple things of what that means to me. We had one thing where we had like I said, we have a lot of email coming through this environment. We see a lot of stuff. And, we had one instance where we saw something get through, super new, super novel. and we hit our abnormal team up and said, hey, like, what's the deal here? And again, I'm not holding abnormal accountable. Like, we're going to see new and novel things. That's the basis of the partnership. And to get a response from the team, within minutes, right? Like, and kind of a full dissertation on how we're going to work together to see this in the future and how we recover from it. That meant a lot to me, right? I don't want it to happen all the time, but we know it's going to happen. Things are going to get through. We're all learning together, but it was that responsiveness. Look, I'm selfish. I want to be the only customer that you have, right? Just like anybody else. But to see that actually in practice through the response time and the attention, through that first incident, really the first and only at this point in time, where we saw something new and novel, was spectacular, right? So nothing but good things to say at this point, and I'm looking forward to the journey ahead. Like I said, we're only a few months into it. We got a lot to learn and grow together, and it's going to be a fun ride.
Well, I love hearing that. And playing all cards face up, I too am a former customer of Abnormal. Before I came to the company, I was at a Fortune 500 financial services company and ended up joining Abnormal, but not before using it for a year and a half, and had a similar experience. For me, it saved me in a number of ways, right? One of the major improvements that I experienced was around recouping analyst time. So I was able to recoup half an FTE exclusively just on the way that it was analyzing user-reported phishing. So have either of you experienced some sort of improvements in terms of either efficacy or productivity since you've deployed Abnormal? Ariel, I'm going to come back to you first.
Sure, yeah, and I think it's absolutely efficiency, but then repurpose time. So I think, Mike, you said earlier, we can never have enough people, and that's because there's always more things that our people can do. So very similar in terms of the user-reported phishing emails. I mentioned kind of the recent trend towards the phishing and the spam looking more and more like each other. So we tend to get a lot of spam reported as phishing. I think we've done a really good job over the last decade of educating people to report everything. And so they do. They report everything. Anything they want to get out of their inbox, sometimes they report it as phishing emails. And that means that as humans monitoring that box, it would be their full-time job if we didn't have a capability like Abnormal to do the automated phish response part of it. So absolutely. And that has allowed us to repurpose human time on things that matter, in some cases upskilling the team members because that's all they've done for so long, and giving them an opportunity to grow themselves and to develop in their own careers. So 100% agree with you. I think that is one of the biggest advantages of using a product like Abnormal for that.
Yeah, I don't always measure ROI, and I haven't for Abnormal yet, just being clear, because we're still learning. Now, we have upskilled a lot of the staff members that have dealt with email security using this tool, but we're still kind of in that learning mode. So I couldn't be as confidently say, well, it shaved XYZ off the thing. But like I said, efficacy in email security, it rules the day, right? If it doesn't work, we're going to spend a lot of time recovering and maybe a lot of money, depending on what happens, right? So for me, again, based on the test that we did, the efficacy is there. I sleep better at night. I sleep better at night knowing that this risk is mitigated as best as I possibly can with the best partner I possibly can. And everything else in the ROI perspective will work itself out.
Yeah, and Mike, you in particular brought up what it's like to partner with a vendor when things are going really well. And even when things go sideways, how they respond to that makes a huge difference in how you view that vendor is now becoming a true partner for you. And for me, that experience was in terms of ideas that we brought to the Abnormal team. I'll never forget, we'd been using the product for a couple of months, and there were some UI improvements that I was like, man, why does it not do this? Why does it not do that? And I remember bringing them back to my Abnormal team and saying, hey guys, we have these ideas. And they were like, great, I'll put in a feature request. I was like, great, that's where good ideas go to die. And the difference was, 2 weeks went by, I forgot all about it. I got a call from my team and they said, Mick, do you have a minute to hop on the Zoom? And I said, sure. We hopped on. they were demonstrating the ideas that we had submitted just a couple of weeks before and showing just how quickly they were willing to work with us. Now, that's not always possible, I understand, and these were probably small changes, but it made a huge difference for me and my team, for my analysts, in the way that we were able to use the product right away. So have you both seen anything like that in terms of working with the Abnormal team where they have been able to respond very quickly to some ideas or some concerns? Mike, you brought one of those stories up already. So let me start with Ariel. Have you had any of these kinds of experiences either here at Aon or in your past experience?
Yeah, I can think of an example in the past where sometimes preventing the false positives is equally as important as preventing the false negatives, because we know in security that something doesn't work in the business, the last thing that caused the problem the last time will be the first thing that gets blamed the next time, right? So our tools carry a reputation with them, and certainly the architecture for Abnormal is better in that it's not in line, and so it's not as likely to cause operational impacts. But certainly, blocking legitimate business emails can have really serious, implications. And so we've had some situations in the past where we had some legitimate things that got blocked in the gray mail side of the house, and there was a lot of partnership in working together to solve that, to prevent that going forward. And my philosophy is always to spend the team time in helping to improve that, because it only helps us in the end. And I think depending on the size of your team and the size of your company, you may have less willingness to spend as much time in kind of helping to tune and improve it. But I think it only improves it ultimately in the end for us. So we spent time in investing in that and helping to broaden the product and to work together. And I think there was absolutely positive response on the other side. So it was a great partnership. And I think that capability has come a long way as a result of that.
Yeah, Mick, I already brought up my one example, but I'm going to get a little bit on a soapbox here. And I think I mentioned this in the town hall. And I mentioned this 3 times already on this thing, right? The tech works, right? Abnormal's story at DXC began with a very simple statement: just give us a chance to show you what we can do. And that was it, right? And there's a swagger behind that. I know what I'm doing works. I'm not trying to fool you on anything. I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods. I know that we can provide the best technology platform to secure email for your enterprise. Just give us a chance. That's a powerful statement. There's a lot of swagger behind that, right? I said, all right, we'll give you a chance. You already have the tech and the ability to do it very quickly, demonstrate efficacy quickly. But there's a really simple equation when it relates to partnership. I already talked about responding to emails quickly, and I want to be the only person in the room and all that good stuff, right? But alignment to myself, my team, and my business's goals, right? And transparency breeds trust. And if you don't follow that equation, you're not going to get trust, not with me, probably not with Ariel, and probably not with a lot of customers, right? But if you stick to those rules, I've aligned with you, I understand what's important to you, I understand where you're struggling, and I'm going to be very transparent with you. Hey, we missed something. Yeah, we did. Let's work together to do it. That's trust. And trust is going to span years, not just months, right? Or not just a contract duration. So that's what I leave the team with that's out there, right? Is rest on the fact, that the tech works, right? Align with your customers, be as transparent as possible, right? And you will have intimate relationships, trusted relationships for a very long time.
I love it. So, Ariel, coming back to you, what words of advice would you offer to a CISO that was considering the Abnormal platform?
I think, there's nothing better than selling the story than to see it in action. So I think in my past, as the first time customer, when we had it in detection mode as part of our pilot, it actually found something that we didn't even know was happening in the environment. So it hadn't been reported by the end users, hadn't been detected by any of our other tools. It was kind of a no-brainer at that point. It sort of paid for it itself by demonstrating. It was a BEC related incident too, so it was a near miss where we could have had money go out the door, and actually during the pilot itself, we were able to detect and block it. So I would say just give it a try, and it'll kind of sell itself.
I love it.
So I had one of those incidents too, Ariel. So we did find something in our demonstration as well that was interesting. I got the call. So yeah, we saw something. Oh, and then we had to respond to it. And luckily, it was all good, but it did demonstrate again the power of the platform. But I think like you talked about the advice to a CISO, right? My advice to a CISO is you should always be trying new stuff. You should always be challenging your partners as it relates to either how well it works, the place in the stack, the cost, right? We have a sacred obligation to our companies to provide the maximum risk reduction that our companies can afford at that time, given the business realities and business direction, right? That's what we report on. So again, the power of this is you can give it a try in like a week. There's no barrier to entry. So what's the harm in that, right? And you can do it for any number of reasons. Maybe you need to save money based on incumbent. Maybe you need to deprecate on-prem infrastructure and go to a full cloud solution. Maybe you need to have like us, like we're always doing, is generating AI stories of what we do internal so we can brag about it, right? Any of those realities you can get with a 1 to 2 week demo. And again, I'm not here just to shill for abnormal, but in the end, the truth is the truth. And that's something that is very powerful for CISOs, that power of choice without such a barrier to entry. It's a big deal.
I love it. So as we wrap up here, we're obviously at the start of a brand new year here. So what are your predictions when it comes to AI and cybersecurity in 2025? What do you think is going to change? And let me tag on to the end of that. What is maybe one AI tool or functionality capability that is not yet on the market or you haven't seen it yet on the market that you would love to see? Let me start. Let me go back to Mike here, and then we'll end with Ariel.
I would say AI-based continuous attack surface testing. I'm sure it's probably out there somewhere, right? But like something that actually works, because I know our adversaries are working on continuous AI-driven attack surface testing at scale, right? So when we think a couple years in advance, that's what worries me, right? Is right now we're dealing with very smart humans that are very well funded, that are constantly looking at weaknesses in our networks. When those humans are replaced, as we mentioned earlier, with AI agents that can do it at speed and at scale at a quantity that we're not ready for, we have to meet that with the testing and the remediation. And that's what I'm really hoping for in 2025 is kind of that evolution of vulnerability management, but it kind of comes together where it's, hey, you have a problem, we can do this quickly, and we have an agent-to-agent communication in which we can then remediate or fix it, obviously with guardrails. That to me is kind of the panacea to really meet that threat where it's coming, which is that adversarial AI that's going to be coming to us sooner rather than later, right? So that's what we need to see, and that's what I'm hoping to see on the market. So if anyone out there knows of a good startup that's really effective, I'd be willing to take a meeting.
There you go. Ariel, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'll go with kind of what I said at the beginning around the context and the tying together the multiple channels. So I'd like to see a product that takes telemetry from email and endpoint and network and brings those things together, because oftentimes the understanding of the topology of our networks and our architecture is the most important part in understanding whether something is legitimately bad or just looks bad because it's some sort of like business process that our teams are used to. So I'd like to see a product that creates a model that brings the data together from all of the existing tool sets. So I don't need a new EDR, I don't need a new, NDR, etc., but something that takes the existing telemetry and signals from those things, pulls it together, and in one set of data models, again, creates kind of like that human view by being able to tie together the context around that. And maybe to take it one step further, I know there's been attempts at this that haven't necessarily been successful, but the sharing of some of this sensor data across companies, which I know is a capability that Abnormal takes advantage of by taking, what you see at one customer, applying and learning that at the next. I think the more of that signal-based sharing that we can do between companies and across sectors, not just like within one sector, is important for improving some of that anomalous detection. So tying that all together, bringing all the signals together, doing more anonymized sharing in the back end of those signals to then ultimately improve each other's models is, I think, the only way to combat some of those sophisticated, attackers that Mike was talking about.
Perfect. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our time together. I do want to say thanks again to Ariel and to Mike for sharing your CISO perspective here on AI and all things cybersecurity, both current and future. I would be remiss to not plug the abnormal risk assessment here, given the reviews that Mike and Ariel both just gave us. If you've been thinking about trying Abnormal and just want to see what AI can do, this is a free program that we offer to show you what your current security tools are missing. It's really easy to set up, doesn't cause any problems with your mail flow, and you'll get a customized report that really dives into the attacks that are bypassing your current tools so that you can see what Abnormal can do for you. If you're interested in that, and I really can't recommend it enough, there's a link to request it in the resources section of this session. So take a look there. And with that, it's time for our breakout sessions after a short break here. In track 1, we have a couple of great sessions starting with Sanjay, the CTO of here at Abnormal, diving into all things AI in the Abnormal platform. From there, I'm going to be moderating 2 more panels, one on new threats and new technologies predicted for 2025 with Axonius, and then wrapping up the day with a panel featuring Sierra, where we'll dive into the AI black box and understanding all the data that goes into AI-powered cybersecurity systems. Over on track 2, we have some sessions on how to get the most out of your Abnormal platform, starting with a session on AI security mailbox, and then we'll hear why and how so many Abnormal customers have chosen to entirely remove their third-party secure email gateway system after implementing the Abnormal platform. That track wraps up with an overview of the upcoming Abnormal platform roadmap for this year, which for customers you do not want to miss. And then, of course, we'll finish the day with Sherrod DeGrippo of Microsoft, and I'm super excited for that session. So take a quick break, and we'll be back soon with more great content for you. Thank you.